Christian spiritual teachers sometimes speak of offering up one's personal pain as a way of being in solidarity with people everywhere who are in pain. Buddhists practice loving kindness for others, both friends and those they find difficult to be with. It's a matter of either shutting down the heart and protecting ourselves from the pain, or being with the pain as a human experience, accepting it, moving through it, deepening from it. It turns out, as we learned from the Icelanders, that comfort and ease do not necessarily make for happiness. What people desire most of all is that their life is fully engaged, that their life has meaning. This morning, I'm going to tell you two stories about people who found meaning through engaging difficult circumstance. The first is the story of Father Gary Smith, the Jesuit priest who was featured yesterday in the Oregonian. Smith has ministered to mentally ill people on Burnside, has lived among Sudanese refugees in northern Uganda, and now during the past 16 months he has been living in Portland, recovering from prostate cancer. It's time for him to go back to Africa, he says. This time he's asked the Jesuits to send him to Zimbabwe. If you've been following the news, you know that political turmoil is tearing that country apart, and inflation is now somewhere around 1,000,000% a year. Anyone trying to do good work with the people there is suspected of working against the ruling party and therefore is at risk. But Africa is pulling at Smith. Now, Smith in Portland lives in a single room at the Jesuit Center over in the southeast. It's a nice room, he says. I can look out at 5 redwoods and lots of grass. I have a nice bed without a mosquito net and my own bathroom, not like living in Uganda. No electricity, no plumbing, no phone, no running water. There I lived in one room, thatch-covered house, which I shared with lizards, fleas, mosquitoes, plump cockroaches, and a million, what the hell is that, creepy crawlers. Not to mention the snakes, the cobras, the black mambas. Here, Gary is a vegetarian, but there he ate what he was given, simple meals of tea, fish or beans, bread made of maize or sorghum. Sometimes he just longed for a cold beer or a slice of cheddar cheese. Why, you might ask yourselves, why would he be wanting to go to Zimbabwe, into the heart of deprivation and danger? Well, Smith says that he misses Africa and all the adjustments it demands. I miss the simplicity, the pain of it all, he says. He looks forward to packing a pair of jeans, maybe a pair of khakis, and buying whatever else he needs from the used clothing vendors in an African market. He'll take a good flashlight, a copy of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, 2 copies of the Bible, one in English, the other in Spanish, and his shortwave radio. In Uganda, Smith advocated for refugees who needed medical care, education, food, and clothing. In our country, he sees children smiling, running, playing. There, he held children starving in his arms. He says, refugee children accept hardship and deprivation as a part of life. They learn the truth early. Life is not fair. Despite the conditions he will face, Smith can't wait to go back. It's hard for him to explain exactly why. It's like falling in love, he says. It's counterintuitive, but so is Christianity. Sometimes we don't choose hardship. Sometimes tragedy just comes and knocks on our door unexpectedly. That is what happened last year with Mark and Hannah Lilly when their son Felix took a bad fall out of a tree and nearly died. With multiple fractures and soft tissue injuries. Felix was unconscious and breathing with the help of a ventilator. Doctors were trying to be optimistic without creating false hope. A neurosurgeon used phrases such as life-threatening, near death, and brain dead. Felix did recover, however, and during the long journey to recovery, his dad, Mark, kept a most remarkable journey, which I understand will soon be published in book form. I have permission to share with you some of Mark's writing about how this tragedy affected his own life. But before I read this, I want to acknowledge something. This child did recover. Sometimes children don't recover. There are people in this congregation who have lost their children. I have known during the time of my ministry, families, 4 families as a matter of fact, who have lost not one child but 2 children. And so the ending is not always as positive as the ending for this story. So I just want to acknowledge that. But to go on with Mark's journal, this is the father writing now. A few days after the injury to his son, Mark wrote this: "While I love to imagine, I have learned so painfully these past few days how it takes one away from the present moment. With this tragedy, the present moment is the only time I can safely inhabit, and it is the time that is most helpful to Felix. While hope is enticing, you cannot in this context abide by any hope unless you give equal time to hope's companion, fear. And the fear is so devastating that I cannot go there. So I return time and time again to the present moment, to massaging Felix's feet, to speaking to him of friends and games and Portland, to holding my wife, to simply sitting late at night and listening to the breath being moved in and out of his body by machine, knowing that breath is breath and he is alive, and we have not been required to step across the great chasm to the other side. And for that, with each breath, I am deeply, deeply grateful."